Hi guys, welcome on board. Thanks for joining in. I believe I'm audible. Alright guys, so today's session is on the Amazon Route 53, which is basically a DNS mapping service and quite a useful service for routing the website traffics, domains traffic to the web servers. And this way it helps you to put your websites or the applications on the production with the help of the Route 53. So let's look into what we have in the Route 53 section today, guys. Thanks for joining in and welcome on board. Let's continue. So what's in it for you today? We are going to understand about what exactly the AWS is. In brief, we are going to understand about the Amazon Web Services, and then we are going to move to the Amazon Route 53 service. What exactly the Amazon Route 53 service is? What are the benefits of Route 53? Types of different routing policies that the Route 53 offers. Amazon Route 53 key features. How we can access Amazon Route 53, and then I would be showing you one demo where I would be using a domain to route the traffic to one of the web servers hosted on the AWS instance. So it's going to be a excited session today. A lot of practical understanding you are going to get about Route 53. Now let's look into what exactly the AWS is all about. So what is AWS? Just a minute. And I believe you can view my screen, right? Okay. So coming back to the AWS. So what is AWS? AWS stands for Amazon Web Services. It's a cloud provider that offers a variety of services such as compute power, database storage, used for content delivery, and other resources to help business scale and grow. So Amazon Web Services is one of the largest public cloud providers, and when we say the public cloud providers, that means anyone can work on the Amazon Web Services. They can create their credentials and start using so many services that the AWS offers related to compute power, database services, storage services, and content delivery services. Along with that, you can access Amazon Web Services for various different business functionalities like for machine learning, for IoT, and many more. So Amazon Web Service is easy to use for a beginner. The platform is very much interactive. It is designed to keep the data safe irrespective of the size of the data. So people think that the cloud platforms, primarily the public cloud platforms, are not secured, but Amazon Web Services has taken a lot of security measures to keep the data safe and secure irrespective of whatever the size of the data you keep on the AWS infrastructure. It has a policy of pay as you go pricing. There are no long-term commitments, and hence it is cost effective. One of the major advantage of using the AWS and the cloud platform is that whatever resources you access, or whatever the resources that you are working on, you pay only for the duration you are going to access them. That is what we call as a pay as you go pricing. For example, let's say if you launch a virtual machine or a virtual server on the AWS cloud and you use it for 1 hour or 2 hour duration, you will be billed only for that much duration. whether you use it for 2 hours, 3 hours, or as much as you want. Accordingly, the billing is going to happen. Now let's try to understand about Amazon Route 53. Let's consider a scenario of an employee. Rachel is trying to open a web application. What challenge she is going to face? The challenge she faces is the server usage is 100%. The memory usage is close to 100%. The web is not opening quickly. It's just circling around and then it is throwing an error. The web is not found. It's a disappointment for Rachel. Rachel asks, is there any efficient way to scale resources according to user requirements? Is there a way that since the server usage is 100%, memory usage is 100%, so can there be a possibility to increase the resources so that we can down the server usage, the memory usage? It can be reduced. The admin says, yes, on the AWS, we can scale resources efficiently with the help of Amazon Route 53 service. So here, if you look into this particular symbol, the symbol representation is of an Amazon Route 53. That's how it looks like. Amazon Route 53 is a DNS service, domain name service, and that gives developers an efficient way to connect users to internet applications without any downtime. So Route 53 is basically a DNS management service, and that's the reason that it is named as a Route 53, because the DNS port is the 53 number. The port number 53 is where the DNS works on. Now what is exactly the DNS is? DNS is basically a domain mapping to an IP address and vice versa, right? So that's all what the Route 53 does in terms of the DNS mapping services, so that the domains, if the domains that are purchased from any external resource or from any external vendor, the traffic from the domain can be routed to the web servers located on the AWS. Rachel says, that sounds interesting. I want to learn more about it, how it can be done. Sure, let me explain some important concepts of Amazon Route 53, and definitely we are going to work in a practical way on the AWS as well. Now let's look into what exactly the Amazon Route 53 is all about. How does we work on the Route 53, and what are the policies that the Route 53 offers? Amazon Route 53 is a highly available and scalable DNS or domain name system web service. This is how the Route 53 is represented. So whenever you see a diagram, an architecture, and you find this particular symbol, that represents the Route 53 only. Amazon Route 53 performs three main functions in any combinations. What are those? The first one, if a website needs a name, Route 53 registers the name for the website. Now what does that mean? It means, for example, you're planning to host a website on the AWS cloud, you're planning to launch your website on the AWS cloud, but you are finding a name, a domain name through which the users can open up your web application or a website. For example, the domain name could be something like google.com, aws.com, amazon.in. It can be anything, msn.com, yahoo.com. Likewise, these are all domain names. So likewise, for your website, you can also select a domain name. So Route 53 says, if a website needs a name, you can register the name of the website. That means it gives the registration services as well. You can find a domain directly from the Route 53. If you are thinking to have a domain for your website, you can search if that is available on the Route 53 or not, and then you can purchase on an annual basis. The second functionality of a Route 53 is, Route 53 helps to connect the browser with the website or web application when the user enters the domain name. Now obviously that is the main thing for which we use the Route 53. For example, let's say I reserve a domain or a name for my website. I take up an example. I reserve a name for my website as www.example.com. Now when somebody, or let's say you, open up example.com, you should be able to open up my web page. So that means the example.com traffic should be routed to the server where the website code or the website application is running. How we can achieve that functionality? That is something we can achieve it with the help of the Route 53. So that's what the step 2 or the point 2 suggests us, that the Route 53 helps to connect the browser with the website or web application when the user enters the domain name. Route 53 checks the health of the resources by sending automated requests over the internet to a resource. So that is also one of the important features of the Route 53. It does the internal health check of your website, your application running on multiple servers as well, and there are different type of routing policies that you can specify so that you can cater the traffic coming from various different locations across the globe efficiently. Now what are the benefits of Amazon Route 53? Let's look into it. The benefits of using Amazon Route 53 are: it is highly reliable, absolutely. It ensures a consistent ability to route the applications. Scalable, automatically handles large queries without the user's interaction. So you can have different routing policies on the basis you can get the Route 53 handle the sudden spike in the traffic towards your website or your application. Easy to use. It is easy to sign up, configure DNS settings, and provide fast response to queries. Just 2-3 steps that you need to follow when you work on the Route 53, and then you're going to find that your website is live in a time of minutes only. Cost effective. Pay only for the service you use. So depends on different type of zones that you're going to create in the Route 53. Accordingly, the billing is going to happen. So Route 53 is not that expensive service. Definitely there will be charges associated with the Route 53 service, since it's a managed service by the AWS, but it is not that expensive. Secure. The user secures the access rights by integrating Route 53 with the AWS Identity Access Management. So you can integrate Route 53 with the IAM service, and accordingly you can delegate the accesses of the Route 53 to the specific users. Now Route 53 offers different type of routing policies to us. What exactly the routing policy is? The routing policy means that when somebody tries to open up your website, tries to type a domain on the browser, let's say www.example.com. Now how that domain request, the traffic request, would go to the backend server where the actual website or the application is running. It is dependent on what type of a routing policy that has been selected in the Route 53. So there are various types of routing policies that we can use based on the type of an architecture, the type of a website or an architecture that we are going to deploy on the AWS. If it's a small website where we are expecting a traffic coming from a local location, a local region, we can go for a simple routing policy, and it depends again upon how much traffic is expected, from which location the traffic is expected, and how do you want the availability and the scalability to be planned. So accordingly we have to select the routing policies. So we have a simple routing policy, which is one of the most easiest way of routing the traffic to the backend websites or the applications. Now what does a simple routing policy do? The simple routing allows to configure DNS with no special Route 53 routing. That means with the help of a simple routing policy, we can route the entire domain traffic to a single server, which means that in the backend, the website or the web application would be running only on a single server, and the 100% traffic would go to that server only. There will be no bifurcation. It routes traffic to a single resource, example web server to a website. With simple routing, multiple records with same name cannot be created. No, it's not possible. The reason is because the entire traffic is routed to a single server, so multiple records cannot be created. But you can have multiple values that can be specified in the same record set. So we are going to see that how we can create multiple record set for the same server in the simple routing policy. Then we have another type of a routing policy that is called as the failover routing policy. Now what happens on a failover routing policy? The failover routing routes traffic to a resource when the resource is healthy, or to a different resource when the previous resource is unhealthy. Failover routing policy is just like an active standby kind of a setup. So for example, let's say we are having two servers in the backend where the same website or an application is running. With the help of a failover routing policy, the entire traffic coming from the internet, from the domain, would be routed directly to one of the server. But the second server in the backend will be kept as a standby, as a backup. The second server is going to get the traffic only when the first server is not responding, and this is why we use a failover routing policy, which is primarily used for redundancy and for the standby kind of a routing. So what I do, guys, before moving ahead with other routing policies, let's try to understand how do we work on the Route 53 in the practical way. And once we achieve the routing of a traffic to our backend applications, backend servers, then we are going to further understand about the other routing policies that the Route 53 offers us. Let's look into it. So I have already logged in into the AWS console, and just a minute. Just a minute, guys. Hi, Anmol. Hello. 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 Hello, Anmol. Hello, Anmol. हाँ अनमोल। हाँ अनमोल, ये AWS का लिंक कैसे आएगा यार? डेमो कैसे शो करूँगा मैं? इट विल नॉट डिस्प्ले ऑन दी वीडियो।
हाँ, आपको एक नया उसके लिए वो स्क्रीन वाला, जैसे हम लोग ने पीपीटी में ऐड किया था ना, विंडो कैप्चर,
हाँ,
एक न्यू विंडो कैप्चर डालना पड़ेगा।
उसमें क्या क्लिक करना पड़ेगा मेरे को सिलेक्ट?
हाँ, बस आप स्क्रीन टू पे जाओ, सीन
गूगल
टू पे
क्रोम,
जैसे
गूगल क्रोम, हाँ हो गया, ठीक है, ओके।
हाँ।
Alright guys, so I believe you can see my screen. Let me check that, just a minute. Yeah, so here you can see I have moved to the AWS console, and I believe you guys know how to log in into the AWS console. Let me show you quickly. So how to work on the AWS console is, first of all, we have to go to Google, the search engine, type AWS console, the management console, and here you need to select the AWS management console. Click on sign in to the console. Provide the user credentials. Provide your password. And here you go. We have logged in into the AWS console. Now we have to work on the Route 53. Now to work on the Route 53, what are the things that we require? The first of all, we need to have an instance created, the EC2 instance created, and on that EC2 instance we need to have a website or a web application running, and then we need to have a domain. A domain can be purchased from the Route 53, or it can be purchased from any other third-party vendor like GoDaddy or Web Hostinger. And the third thing is we need to have a Route 53 zone. So these are the three things that we require to work on the Route 53 and route the traffic of a domain to the backend servers, so that the domain becomes live. So if you look into my screen, I have one domain that I have purchased from GoDaddy. GoDaddy is a third-party domain service, and you can register the domains from here. You can purchase a domain of your choice from here, and here you can see I have purchased one dummy domain, cloudlabsonrent.com. So we are going to use this particular domain, and we are going to route the traffic of this domain to the instance that would be running on our AWS console. So how we can do that? Let's look into it. So first of all, I'll move to the EC2, and though I have already created two instances where the website or an application is running, and I believe you guys can also host, you know how to host an application on the instance. Otherwise, I can quickly show you how you can launch a basic HTML web page on the EC2 instance, and we can leverage that associated with the Route 53. So I'm going to launch one instance, the t2.micro primarily. Let's say I name it as something web server 3, and from the key pair perspective, I'll proceed without a key pair, and here I would allow the HTTP traffic because the request would be coming directly on the HTTP ports, and launch an instance. So here you can see I have launched one instance, the web server 3, and I'm going to leverage that with my domain cloudlabsonrent.com. I'm just waiting for the instance to be in a running state so that I can connect. I can quickly host a simple HTML application on this server, and then we can link it up to the domain cloudlabsonrent.com with the help of the Route 53 service. Now I'm going to connect to the instance, and obviously I'm going to connect using a web connect only. So click on connect. waiting for the console access. Here we go. So I've been given EC2 user access, and I will be moving to a root user. For that, I'll be using a command sudo su sudo super user, and here I'm going to install the Apache, the yum install httpd. Guys, we are not going in depth of how we can host a application, how we can work on the Linux. We are going to keep it very simple because we need to understand the functionalities of the Route 53 service. So I'm going to install an Apache here, and then I'm going to move to the HTML directory. From EC2-user directory, I'll just move to the HTML directory. The command is cd/var www.html, and here I'm going to create a simple index.html or a PHP file, whatever you want. So I'm going to use nano, type a command type a file name index.html, and it opens up the file editor. I'm not going to write any HTML tags. I'm going to get it from the internet itself. So I'm just going to find some HTML codes that we can use for our website. So I'm just going to get a form, copy the entire code, and just going to paste it in our file HTML. Now we need to exit from here. So we need to press Ctrl and X together to exit, press Y to save the file, and press the enter key, and here we go. We are back to the shell. Now when you do list or list file, you get the index.html file is created in the HTML directory, and if you want to read the code inside this file, you can always type cat index.html or cat index.html pipe more. So these are all Linux related things. We are just going to skip that. And the final thing, from the server perspective, I'm just going to restart the Apache. So the command is service http d restart. That's it. So now I'm going to close the shell, going back to the instance, the web server 3, and I'm going to see whether we are able to get the web page output directly from the server or not. So as all we know, that when we create an instance, we get the public IP as well as the private IP. So I'm just going to access the web page from the public IP itself. So I'm going to copy the public IP of the instance, put that on the browser, and I'm going to send the HTTP request to the server. Here we go. So I'm able to get a my survey form, and this is coming from the index.html page that I hosted on one of the EC2 instance. Now guys, I cannot publish my website by putting up the IP address 18.188.12.60 to my users, to the clients. I need to link it with the domain. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a Route 53 service so that I can map this cloudlabs on ren.com and point it to this server IP. With that, if anyone opens cloudlabs on ren.com on the browser, they are going to get the same output, and that's how we publish our websites. Let's see how we can achieve this. Now we need to understand the functionality of our Route 53. So we'll move to the Route 53 service. I'll just search for it. Click on the Route 53. And if you have observed here, the Route 53 is a global service. We don't have to select a region. And the best thing is, for the global services are, when we work on the global services, we can leverage any region. We can route the traffic to any of the region, wherever our web servers are located. So it's a centrally managed service. The entire management of the service is done in the backend by AWS. And what we are going to do now is, we are going to understand the components of the Route 53, how we are going to work on it. As I mentioned in the slides, you can even register a domain on the Route 53. So this cloudlabs on ren domain I have purchased from GoDaddy. If you want, you can get it directly from the AWS as well. How? When you go to the Route 53 dashboard, just go scroll down, go to the domains and click on registered domains. And then it asks you to search for a domain. Just click on register domain again and type a domain of your choice and see whether it is available or not. Let's say I want to get a domain something related to examplecloud.com and check. And it says examplecloud.com is not available. Let me try to search something else. route53.com. It says yay, example route53.com is available, and you can get it for $12 a year annual subscription. You can add to cart and you can pay as well. So this way you can use this domain for 1 year, and after that again you have to renew the subscription. So we are not going to register any domain. We already have a domain. We are going to see how we can map it to our EC2 instance. So again I'm going back to the Route 53 dashboard, and what we need to do is, first of all, we have to create a hosted zone. So when we work on the Route 53 specifically in these kind of demos, in these kind of examples, there are two things that we need to work on in the Route 53. One is we need to create a hosted zone, and the second thing is we need to create a record set which is created inside the hosted zone. These are the two things that we need to remember. Now what exactly the hosted zone is? A hosted zone tells Route 53 how to respond to the DNS queries for a domain. So when we create a hosted zone, it gives us some 4 DNS servers or the name servers, and those name servers are going to resolve the request coming from the cloudlabsonrent.com domain, which will be done by the Route 53. So this is the first thing to progress, and hence I'm going to click on create a hosted zone, provide a domain. Let's say I provide the domain name as cloudlabsonrent.com, and it is going to be a public hosted zone because our domain is on the public network, it's on third party, and click on create a hosted zone. So once you create a hosted zone, you would get 4 name servers. These are the DNS servers. That means these are going to resolve the domain name coming from the traffic coming from GoDaddy, and SOA is starts of authority. So right now we don't have to work on the start of authority. It gives you the DNS information only. We need to focus more on the name servers, the 4 name servers. So what we need to do is we need to tell these 4 name servers to a platform from where we have purchased the domain. We need to update these 4 name servers on a platform where we have purchased a domain. So I have purchased a domain on GoDaddy, so I have to tell GoDaddy that this domain should be resolved by these 4 name servers that are provided by Route 53. Now what benefit we get? The benefit we get is when anyone tries to access cloudlabsonrent.com on the browser, the request for resolution, the name resolution request, goes to these 4 name servers that are running on the AWS. So that way we are able to route the traffic towards the AWS. This becomes the first stage completion. So how we can update these 4 name servers onto the platform from where we have purchased the domain? What we need to do is, let's say we go to GoDaddy, find our domain, go to the DNS or the name servers, click on change, enter my own name servers, click on it, and here we are going to delete the existing name servers and we are going to update the new name servers that we got from the Route 53 hosted zone. What we need to do is we have to update all the 4 name servers on GoDaddy. So you just have to copy the name server and exclude the last dot. You don't have to copy the entire link, just have to exclude the last dot. Copy it, paste it. Step by step you have to complete this activity. Copy till the and exclude the last dot. Again the third one, copy it, exclude the last dot, and the final one. So these 4 name servers are provided for the extra redundancy. Generally, if you try to host a domain on any of the third-party tools, they provide you 2 name servers. But the good thing about AWS is it provides you 4 name servers. That gives you a better redundancy, better resolution of name, faster way. And click on save. Yes, I consent to update name servers for the selected domains. Click on continue, and all these name servers are updated on the third party tool, that is GoDaddy, from where we have purchased the domain. Now we are going back to the AWS, and the final thing is we need to create a record set. So we have to click on create a record. Now why the record sets are created? Because by hosted zone we are able to get the traffic on the AWS. Now from the AWS we have to route the traffic to the instance where our website is running, and for that we have to create a record set. So we'll go to the record set, provide the record name. So we can have multiple resource names, multiple sources we can create. So here I can put something like www.cloudlabsonrent.com, and you can select a record type A. Generally, if you have to route a traffic directly to one single server using an IP address, then we prefer to use A, route traffic to an IPv4 address and some AWS resources. In case if you are going to route a traffic to a load balancer, for example, so we don't get the IP address for the load balancers, we only get the DNS name. So in that case we have to use the C names, right, the common name. So right now I'm going to show you how we can route a traffic to a single server using the public IP address of that instance, and then I'm going to show you how we can work on the CNAME as well, because we have the load balancer also created. And here in the value we have to specify the IP address of an instance where our website, the actual website, is running. So we'll go to the instance, find the IP address of the server, the web server 3, copy and paste that in the values. Click on create a records, and here you can see we have created a record set as well. So if anyone tries to access www.cloudlabsonrent.com, the request would go to this IP address, and the web page to the user would be retrieved from the 18.188.12.60 IP address, which belongs to our web server where the website is run. Alright, I can add more record sets also. I can make the changes here itself, and it is up to the requirement only. Alright, now we are going to test whether we can get an output from www.cloudlabsonrent.com, and we should get an output of our web page. This web page should be able to open from the domain. Let's look into it. So I'm going to open up a browser, type www.cloudlabsonrent.com, and here we go. We got the output. Now where exactly this web page is coming from? This web page is coming from this particular web server 3, because here we have hosted that. This way we can publish our websites. Now our website can be live. Further on it, I can add the SSL certificates, make it more secure. I can create a record set with HTTP URL, with the HTTPS URL, many more resources we can add up. Along with that, in the Route 53 we can add the email records as well, the SPF records we can add it up, so that to our website we can have an backend email client configure. A lot of things we can do that from the Route 53. I hope guys you got an idea how to work on the Route 53. Now in case if you have multiple servers in the backend in different regions, or let's say in the same region but there are multiple servers in that same region, and you want the Route 53 to route the traffic of the domain to the multiple servers with the help of a load balancer. So how you can achieve that? Let's look into it. I have already created a load balancer, the classic load balancer, and to the CLB we have a DNS name, the public DNS name, and with this load balancer I have attached two instances in the backend. Both are right now in the stop state. Likewise, I can add a third instance also, the web server 3, but we are going to work with these two instances only as of now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start these two instances from the EC2 dashboard, and then I'm going to link the load balancer with the domain cloudlabsonred.com with the help of a Route 53. So once the instances are started, we'll move to the Route 53. Here we are going to edit the record, and instead of a record type I'm going to use a CNAME, because for the load balancer we don't have the public IPs, we don't have any IP, we have only the DNS name, and for the DNS name you have to use a CNAME. So likewise you can use a load balancer, you can use an S3 static website endpoint also, you can use lambda functions also, you can even use elastic beanstalk DNS names pointed to your backend applications. CloudFormation DNS names you can use, even CloudFront domain names also you can use with the help of a common name routing. So we'll click on the common name routing, and here I'm just going to paste the public DNS name of the load balancer. Click on create a record, and then you would see the traffic from the www.cloudlabsonred.com would be routed to this load balancer, and in the load balancer we are having two instances, so equally the web page would be retrieved from one of the instances. So equal distribution of the load is going to happen by, or equal distribution of the load is going to be done by the load balancer in the backend. Now guys, coming to the routing policies. So right now whatever the demo that I have shown is by using a simple routing policy. That means we are routing the request of a domain and pointing it to one single source in the backend. Either it could be a backend server or it is a backend load balancer, but it's a single entity. So the 100% traffic from the internet is routed to that entity. But with the help of routing policies, you can distribute the traffic among different regions also, based on the architecture need, based on the functionality, and that's what we were understanding when we were covering up the slide. So we covered up the simple routing policy, we covered up the failover routing policy that is primarily used for active standby, and let's try to understand some more routing policies that we can use with the Route 53. So I'm moving to the slides. Just a minute. Let me move to the slide. Let me begin the slideshow. And here we go. So before the demo, we understood the concept of the failover routing policy, which is primarily an active standby kind of a routing policy, and by now you should be having an idea what exactly this Route 53 service is and how do we work on it and how we can use different type of routing policies. So we saw the simple routing policy, how do we work on failover routing policy. When we use it, is primarily used for routing the traffic to an active server, and then when that active server fails, the traffic is transmitted or routed to the backend server or the standby server. The records can also route traffic to anything from an Amazon S3 bucket as a website to a complex tree of records. So you can use it with the S3 endpoints as well, bucket hosting endpoints. You can use it with cloud functions. You can use it with cloud formations, even with the Lambda functions and many other resources. Now let's look into the geolocation routing. The geolocation routing routes the resources that based on the geographical location of the users. So let's say if we are having our web servers running in different geographical locations or different regions. Let's say I have one web server in one of the US region, then another web server in APAC, the third web server in EMEA. And based on the user's location, let's say if a user tries to access the domain from the US, the request would go to the web server in the US location. If anyone from the Asia Pacific tries to access that domain, the request would go to a backend server in the Asia Pacific location only. That is what the geolocation routing are used for, and that reduces the latency so that quickly the users can able to open up the web page and there is a uniform latency that is maintained. It localizes the content and presents part of the entire website in the language of the user. The geographical locations are specified by the continent, by country, or by state, let's say in the United States. Then we have a geo-proximity routing. There is a slight difference between a geolocation and the geo-proximity routing. Let's look into it. Ideally, it is almost similar, but there is a slight difference between the geo-proximity and the geolocation routing. The geo-proximity routing routes traffic to the resources based on the geographical location of the users and their resources. That is what the geolocation also does. But there is an option to route more traffic or less to a given resource by specifying a value known as bias. So we can increase the area of a region with the help of a geo-proximity routing, or we can decrease the area of the region with the help of a geo-proximity routing. And that's what it says. There is an option to route more traffic or less, depends on a resource, depends on how big the server is running, which location the server is running, from where the traffic is coming, and that is something which you can control, which is not possible in the case of a geolocation routing. A bias expands or shrinks the size of the geographical region from which the traffic is routed to a resource. So you can have more states added in that particular location, you can reduce the number of states also, and accordingly from that particular geographical location the traffic will be routed to the respective resources on the AWS. Then comes the latency based routing. So as the name suggests, it is primarily required to perform or to provide a uniform latency. So it is not dependent on the region or a location from where the traffic is originating or where exactly the servers are located on the AWS. It is absolutely based on which region resource are going to give the lowest latency to the user, and from there the request would be completed. So in a latency based routing, if a website has to be installed or hosted across multiple AWS regions, then latency routing policy is used. It improves the performance for the users by serving the request from the AWS region that provides the lowest latency. Now let me take an example. Let's say I am based out in India and there are servers running in Mumbai and one server running in Singapore. But at present, if I try to access a web page, the Mumbai location or the region is offering more latency as compared to Singapore region. So with the help of a latency based routing, the Route 53 is going to route my request to access that web page to a Singapore location server rather than to a Mumbai location server. But if you calculate a geographical distance, geographical location, Mumbai is nearby, but that is offering more latency. So latency based routings are not related to a location. They are based on absolutely based on the current situation which particular region or the location is giving the lowest latency from that user's network. To use latency based routing, we should create latency records for the resources in multiple AWS regions. Then we have a multi-value answer routing, and this is one of the best way of doing a routing policy in case if you are not able to find out which routing policy you should be using, whether you should be using a failover routing policy or a latency based routing policy or geolocation based routing policy. The best thing is use a multi-value answer routing. Now in the case of a multi-value answer routing, what happens is it does the internal health check of the resources, the applications running on the servers or your websites running on the servers, and whosoever returns the request faster, there the actual or the production traffic will be routed to. So multi-value routing configures Route 53 to return multiple values in response to the DNS queries. It also checks the health of resources and return the multiple values only for the healthy resources. So whichever server is most healthier as compared to the other servers, that server is going to get the request for a web page from the internet. It has an ability to return multiple health checkable IP addresses to improve availability and load balancing. Then we have a weighted routing policy. This is something related to a load balancing only. Just like a load balancer, when we use a load balancer on the cloud, what does a load balancer do? It routes our request to the backend server equally based on the algorithm. But with the help of the weighted routing policy, we can segregate a weight, we can specify a percentage, and we can do a cross region weighted routing policy also. On the AWS, when we use the load balancer, the cross region load balancing is a bit difficult to achieve, but with the help of the Route 53 weighted routing policy, we can have a cross region balancing as well, and we can specify the weight or the percentage as well. We can specify that more of the traffic should be going to a server in the US location, some part of the percentage of the traffic should be going to the server in the EMEA location, likewise in the Asia Pacific location. So likewise, based on from where exactly the request for the web page is going to come from, mostly accordingly the percentage or the weight is specified. So in the case of a weighted routing policy, weighted routing routes multiple resources with a single domain name or subdomain name and control the traffic that is routed to each resource. So guys, it is a bit tricky to use a weighted routing policy, and I would appreciate that if you go to the AWS documentation, try to understand how the formula is used for using the weighted routing policy, and accordingly you can plan it, plan the traffic on the proportions where you want to send the request to. It is useful load balancing and testing new version of the software, and that's what the routing policies we have. Now coming back to the Route 53 key features, what all things we observed or what are the functionalities we get from the Route 53. Traffic flow, it routes end users to the endpoint that should provide the best user experience. We have seen that. Domain registration, select domain names and register them with the AWS console. We can choose a domain, we can pick a domain, and we can purchase it from the Route 53 as well. Health checks, it monitors health and performance of the application. So internal health check of an application keeps on happening by the Route 53, so that only the production traffic can be routed to the servers which are the most healthier one. If let's say if our application, our web page, our website got an error, so ideally we would not want that the production traffic should be reaching to that particular server in the backend. And this is something which is eliminated with the help of the Route 53 internal health check parameter. Weighted round robin load balancing, it spreads traffic between several services via a round robin algorithm, and we can do a cross region round robin load balancing as well with the help of a Route 53. Accessing Amazon Route 53, Amazon Route 53 can be accessed in the following way. We can access it using the AWS management console. We have seen that in the demo. We can access it from the software development kits or the SDKs, but we need to install the SDK on our local system or the host systems to access it. We can even access the Route 53 from the Route 53 API that the AWS offers, which is using an API we can put, or we can instruct how the Route 53 should work. And also we can access the Route 53 using the command line interface. So CLI, we can access it using the Cloud Shell, or we can install the CLI on our host machines as well. Along with that, we can access the Route 53 using the AWS tools for Windows PowerShell as well, in case if you are going to use a Windows host machine. What all companies are using Route 53 mostly? Airbnb. We know about Airbnb, that is apartment rental service. Reddit, Instacart, and then you have I think it's Pinterest, Stripe, Medium. These are some of the big companies that are presently using Route 53 for their domain. So when you type airbnb.com, for example, reddit.com, or any of these domains, the route request is sent to the servers on the AWS with the help of the Route 53 only. We have seen the demo how we can route the traffic from the domain purchased on GoDaddy to the Route 53 with the help of the Route 53 to one of the instance and the load balancer, and we have seen that how does it works, guys. I hope you liked today's session. If you have any questions, please let me know. So I open up the session for the question and answers. Let me know for any queries you have, guys. If anyone is having any questions, please let me know. No questions? Please feel free to ask any questions, guys. I think now after watching this video you should be able to even host a simple website. Try this demo on your AWS accounts. Make sure that you use a free tier instance and try to get a domain and route the traffic with the help of the Route 53. So we have a couple of minutes before we end this session. Any questions? Please feel free to ask. So likewise, we are going to get some more exciting demos when you guys are going to join the full course for the Simplilearn, and let's catch up there itself. Alright guys, so if there are no further questions, I'm just going to wrap up today's session, and I wish you all the best for your upcoming assignments. Take care. Bye now guys. Wish you all a Merry Christmas and a